You used to have energy. You used to care more. You used to show up without forcing yourself. Now, even simple things feel heavy. Getting out of bed feels harder. Answering messages feels draining. Small tasks feel overwhelming. And somewhere inside, a quiet accusation whispers, "You're getting lazy." But what if you're not lazy? What if you're exhausted in a way sleep can't fix? Burnout doesn't always look dramatic. It doesn't always look like collapse. Sometimes it looks like low motivation, irritability, emotional numbness, procrastination, feeling behind on everything. And the hardest part, you don't understand why. Because technically, you're still functioning. You're still working, still showing up, still trying. But everything feels heavier than it should. And here's what most people miss. Burnout is not weakness. It's prolonged stress without recovery. Your body has been in output mode for too long. Responsibility, expectations, deadlines, emotional caretaking, being strong, being dependable, being the one who holds it together. And eventually, the system slows you down, not because you failed, but because you didn't stop. Burnout is your nervous system pulling the emergency brake. And when it does, you feel foggy, unmotivated, detached, even spiritually distant. You may try to pray more, work harder, push through. But pushing through is what created it. And this is where it gets uncomfortable. High-capacity people burn out more often, not because they are weak, but because they are capable. Capable people get rewarded for endurance, praised for resilience, affirmed for handling pressure, so they keep handling it. Long after their body asked for rest, let's pause. When was the last time you rested without guilt? When was the last time you stopped performing competence? When was the last time you admitted you were tired before you broke? Burnout builds quietly. It doesn't announce itself. It accumulates like emotional debt. And one day, you wake up and realize you don't feel like yourself anymore. But here's the truth. You didn't lose yourself. You depleted yourself. And depletion can be restored. But first, you have to stop calling it laziness. Let's go deeper. Burnout is not just being tired. It's neurological overload. When stress stays high for too long, your nervous system adapts. At first, it runs on adrenaline. You push harder, you stay alert, you perform, you even feel productive. But adrenaline was never meant to be permanent. Eventually, your body shifts. It stops accelerating. It starts conserving. And conservation feels like brain fog, low motivation, emotional flatness, decision fatigue. You don't suddenly stop caring, you stop having capacity, and that difference matters. Because when capacity drops, your identity feels threatened. You think, what's wrong with me? Why can't I handle this? I used to be stronger than this. But burnout doesn't mean you became weaker. It means you were strong for too long. Here's something most people never realize. Burnout often follows responsibility, not failure. High achievers burn out, caregivers burn out, leaders burn out, parents burn out, faithful, dependable people burn out. Because burnout is what happens when output consistently exceeds recovery. And recovery is not distraction. Scrolling is not recovery. Working less but still thinking about work is not recovery. Prayer while mentally rehearsing your to-do list is not recovery. Recovery requires nervous system safety, and many people don't know how to feel safe while resting. That's the hidden layer. If your identity is built on productivity, rest feels dangerous. If your value is tied to usefulness, slowing down feels irresponsible. If you were praised for being strong, collapse feels like betrayal. So instead of resting, you push a little more. And when pushing stops working, you panic. But here's the part that changes everything. Burnout is not lack of discipline, it's lack of replenishment. And replenishment is not selfish, it is biological necessity. There's also an emotional component most people miss. When you ignore your own limits long enough, your system stops sending polite signals. At first it whispers, "I'm tired." Then it nudges, "This is too much." Eventually it shuts down motivation entirely, because shutdown gets your attention. That loss of motivation, that is protection. It's your nervous system saying, "Weiichi, we cannot continue like this." And here's something important. Burnout doesn't just affect productivity, it affects connection. You feel less patient, less engaged, less inspired, even spiritually. Not because your faith weakened, but because your emotional bandwidth shrank. And when bandwidth shrinks, everything feels harder, including hope. Let's pause here. Have you been running on responsibility without restoration? Have you been showing up for everyone without asking what you need? Have you been strong without being supported? Because burnout is often the cost of unbalanced giving. You give time, you give energy, you give stability, you give attention, and somewhere along the way, you stopped receiving, and humans cannot function on output alone. Even machines overheat, and burnout is overheating of the soul and nervous system combined. This is where the shift begins. If you call burnout laziness, you respond with pressure. If you call burnout weakness, you respond with shame. But if you call burnout what it is, exhaustion of capacity, you respond with compassion. And compassion changes recovery. You cannot shame yourself back into vitality. You cannot pressure yourself back into clarity. You cannot discipline yourself out of depletion. You have to restore, and restoration is slower than adrenaline, which makes it uncomfortable. But it is the only way forward. So how do you recover without abandoning your responsibilities? First, stop trying to return to your old energy. That version of you was running on adrenaline. Adrenaline is not sustainability. You don't need to go back, you need to rebuild differently. Second, separate worth from output. This may be the hardest shift. If your value has been tied to productivity, burnout feels like identity loss. But your worth is not measured in tasks completed. It is not measured in how much you endure. It is not measured in how much you can carry without complaint. You are valuable before you produce anything. Let that sit. Because burnout recovery requires permission. Permission to be slower. Permission to do less. Permission to not fix everything immediately. Third, restore your nervous system before you restore your schedule. Many people try to solve burnout by reorganizing time. But burnout is not a calendar problem, it's a capacity problem. Start with the body, longer exhale breathing, gentle walks, sunlight, reducing stimulation at night, short moments of stillness without a phone. These are not small things. They signal safety, and safety restores capacity. Fourth, reduce one demand. Not all of them, just one. Burnout recovery does not require quitting your life. It requires adjusting pressure. What is one responsibility you can delegate? One expectation you can lower? One area where good enough replaces perfection? Small reductions create breathing room. Breathing room creates recovery. Fifth, reconnect with something that is not performance-based, not achievement, not productivity, something restorative. Music, reading slowly, being outside, quiet conversation, faith practices without evaluation. Because when everything in your life feels measured, your soul needs something unconditional. Here's the spiritual layer. Even spiritually, burnout can distort perception. You may feel distant, flat, disconnected. But that is not failure, it is fatigue. Fatigue dulls sensitivity, it does not remove presence. Recovery often restores spiritual clarity too, but not through pressure, through gentleness. There is something powerful about this realization. Burnout is not proof you are incapable. It is proof you have been carrying too much without replenishment. And carrying too much does not make you strong. It makes you overloaded. Strength is not endless endurance. Strength is sustainable rhythm, work and rest, give and receive, lead and step back, serve and restore. If your rhythm has been unbalanced, your body corrected it for you, not to punish you, but to protect you. You are not lazy for feeling heavy. You are not weak for feeling foggy. You are not failing because you need recovery. You are human. And humans were not designed for constant output. If this resonates, maybe you have been pushing longer than you admit. Maybe you have been calling exhaustion lack of discipline. Maybe you have been harder on yourself than necessary. Recovery will feel slower than you want. But slow is stable is sustainable, and sustainable is stronger than adrenaline. You do not need to prove your capacity. You need to protect it. You do not need to go back to who you were. You need to build who you are becoming. And becoming requires rest. If this reflection helped you breathe a little easier, this space exists for conversations like this. You are not lazy. You are not broken. You are burned out. And burnout can heal. One small adjustment at a time. Before this video ends, there's something you need to hear clearly. You are allowed to be human. Not productive, not impressive, not endlessly capable. Human. You are allowed to have limits. You are allowed to feel tired. You are allowed to not be at your best for a season. Burnout doesn't mean you lost your strength. It means you exceeded your capacity. And exceeding capacity is not a moral failure. It's a signal. Somewhere along the way, you learned that slowing down meant falling behind, that resting meant being lazy, that needing space meant being weak. But none of that is true. Your worth was never tied to your output. You were valuable before the accomplishments, before the deadlines, before the responsibilities, before the praise, and you are still valuable now, even in this slower season, especially in this slower season, because this is where you learn rhythm. This is where you learn balance. This is where you learn sustainability. You don't have to go back to who you were. You don't have to prove your capacity. You don't have to outrun your exhaustion. You just have to rebuild gently. One boundary, one breath, one adjustment at a time. Burnout feels like breaking, but sometimes breaking is what makes rebuilding possible. Not into who you were, but into someone wiser, more balanced, more grounded, more sustainable. And that version of you is not weaker. It's stronger in a quieter way. So if you're watching this and thinking, I don't recognize myself anymore, maybe you're not meant to. Maybe you're becoming someone who doesn't run on pressure. Someone who doesn't confuse stress with strength. Someone who doesn't sacrifice health to maintain image. You are not lazy. You are not behind. You are not less than. You are tired. And tired people deserve restoration, not accusation. Take your recovery seriously. Protect your capacity. Honor your limits. Because your life is not meant to be survived. It's meant to be sustained. And sustained strength is built slowly. You are allowed to slow down. You are allowed to rebuild. And you are not alone in this process. Not even close. Before you go, take a slow breath. Whatever you're carrying today, you don't have to carry it alone. You are seen. You are known. And you are deeply valued. If you need prayer, if you need clarity, if you simply need a quiet place to reflect, this space is here for you. Stay grounded. Stay gentle with yourself. And remember, you are not alone.